Reddit, what's the most disturbing drunk confession you've ever heard? I found out who my real father was when I was 15. It was nighttime and I came down to get a glass of water. My mom was lying on the sofa. She had been drinking earlier. She likes to drink wine, but never enough to get drunk. But this time, she was really drunk. I passed her on the way to the kitchen and she just spoke up and said that she was glad I wasn't her husband's child. I asked her what the fuck she was talking about. Then she told me that her brother was my and my siblings' real father. She said it was the reason why we were so perfect. I haven't confronted my mom or her brother about it. My mom either pretends she never told me or she was too drunk to remember. I'm 100% sure it's consensual. My mom talks to her brother a lot and she always visits him. My dad is always away, so sometimes my mom will bring us to her brother's house and we'll sleep over. My siblings and I even have our own rooms at his house. If you enjoy this video, please give us a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. At a family gathering, my grandma got tipsy and started to tell stories from her childhood. She tells us stories frequently, but this time it took a dark turn. She told us the story of why she hates to go to the dentist. When she was 6 years old during World War II, my family lived in Hamburg, Germany, right next to the harbor. During a particular week in 1943, the city was continuously bombed. Over 35,000 people died, and more than 100,000 more were injured. The houses that were hit burned down and created a huge fire. The fire caused winds that are so strong, it sucked in not only oxygen but also people. The fire gave off so much heat that people running out of their burning houses got stuck in the molten asphalt on the streets and burned to death. As it was all happening around her, that particular smell was present for over a week in her part of the city. Drilling in your tooth creates exactly that smell. My grandma had to stop the dentist as she recognized the smell immediately. This story shook us to the core as it came out of the blue. It still sends chills down my spine. I hung out with my supervisor after work one night. She drank much faster than me, and before long she drunkenly confessed to me the following. When her aging and sick mother, whom she despised, was left in her care, she intentionally withheld certain medications and gave her too much of other ones, with the plan being to kill her off. It worked. She told her other siblings that the illness must have finally gotten to her and she passed in her sleep. Since she was already old and sick, there was no autopsy. A minute later, she snapped out of it and apologized profusely for telling me that, adding that I was the only person she had ever told. During freshman year of college, among all the new friends I made that year, there was one guy who was always a goofball, very laid back and down for whatever. The biggest red flag we got from him was that whenever people were drinking and hanging out, he would always black out. He drank way too much and would kind of spaghetti noodle his way around the party. During one party, a few people and I asked him why he always goes so damn hard. While drooping his head a ton, sloshing around and slurring everything, he told us about how a few months ago, the summer before college started, his best friend called him. They lived in a small town by the beach, and his friend asked him to come meet him to watch the sunset by the water. He biked over there, sat down, and they talked for a while. Everything seemed fine. Then his friend took out a pistol and shot himself in the head, killing himself instantly. Apparently, my friend had to call the police while covered in blood, brains, and skull fragments, just totally in shock. A few weeks later, he went off to college a few states away, still in shock and unable to sleep or focus on anything. He didn't remember telling us that story, and I don't think any of us wanted to bring it up. His drinking habits didn't change until he was about to graduate, by which point he started going to therapy, got a job right after graduation, and seems to be doing better in the years since. When I was 14, my mom took me and my sisters and a couple of our friends to the beach. My sister, 15, and I got our own room with our two friends and wound up meeting some boys and getting drunk. My sister's friend, also 15, was really drunk and got super upset. She confessed that her stepfather had been molesting her for years. Really horrible stuff. It sobered everyone up fast. We rallied around her and told her we were there for her. When we got home from the beach trip a few days later, I knew I needed to tell my mom. After I told my mom, she got the state police involved. There was a trial, and the man was sentenced to 8 years in prison. It turned out he was doing it to the younger sister as well. It was me who did the confessing. When I was 18, I was sexually assaulted on a bridge in the middle of the night when I was all alone. My mom had always told me to bite someone if I got into trouble, so I did. I bit into his neck until my teeth met again. He fell down, then I ran all the way home. A few weeks later, I read in the news that a serial assaulter had gone to the hospital with neck wounds and later died. They'd drawn it down to him attacking someone and them acting in self-defense. I never told anyone until I got really drunk with my boyfriend last year and spilled it. He couldn't believe I'd kept that secret. Bartender here. Probably the most terrifying confession I've heard is from this woman who came into my bar years ago, had 2 shots and a drink, and was real quiet for the first hour. Then she called me over and asked if I could call the police. I asked what's the problem. She then told me that she had just stabbed and sliced the neck of a mugger in the alley and wanted to make sure he was dead first before she reported it. Police were called. The mugger was found dead and the woman was not arrested. She denied ever telling me that she wanted to wait an hour before calling the police and claimed instead that she had passed out in the alley and woke up, then came into the bar in shock. I don't know what happened to her after. My grandpa never talks about his Korean War service. He has severe PTSD and would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. One night, he came home absolutely shit-faced, laid down on the couch, then told me that his entire unit had been wiped out before his eyes. He was the sole survivor and got caught behind enemy lines but made it out. He was their sergeant and blamed himself. Thankfully, he eventually got into veterans therapy in his 60s. I was chilling with this older dude at work one time. We both recently got hired as butchers in a grocery store. A couple of beers down and he starts telling me he's been in prison for 17 years. He got out 2 years ago and it's his first ever job at 64 years old. I got curious and asked him what happened. Without hesitation, he simply answered, "I cut him down with an axe, this piece of shit. And now he's a butcher. He must really like his job, I guess." A friend of mine likes to drink a lot, but he knows he has a limit because when he goes over it, he becomes very talkative. He also doesn't date, and for a long time, we all wondered why. He's a good-looking guy, really nice and fun to be around. He just never wants to date. Well, one time, he got absolutely drunk, and I found out why. It turns out that when he was a kid, he saw his aunt murder his uncle in cold blood. Since then, he's been terrified of being alone with a woman and feels like he could never truly be safe around them. This must have been 25 years ago. I was hanging out with a good friend of mine and 3 of her close girlfriends whom I also knew fairly well. No other dudes except me. We got pretty drunk, and then one of them confessed to having lost her virginity to sexual assault from a former boyfriend. Then the next girl told her own story, and the next, and the next. Then they started telling stories about other girls they knew who were also SA survivors. Not one of them ever reported the assaults to the police, teachers, or other authority. I was utterly horrified. Since that day, whatever the latest statistics have said about the percent of females who have been subjected to SA, I know the real numbers are so much higher. Yes, statistical reports say this too, but hearing those women tell their stories all those years ago, man, it's terrifying to think just how much higher the real numbers must be. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel for more Reddit stories. This is Reddit Story Hour. See you in the next video.